"Get this trash away from the piano before she embarrasses us all." The words cracked through the polished air of the hotel lounge like a whip. Heads turned instantly toward the source. A man in an immaculate suit, a glass of champagne balanced carelessly in his hand, his expression twisted into smug disdain. He wasn't protecting the piano. He was protecting the illusion of exclusivity, the belief that the grand Steinway in the corner belonged only to the wealthy and cultured. In front of him stood a girl, young, her clothes worn, her hair tied back with a frayed ribbon, her shoes scuffed from streets she had walked too long. She wasn't loud. She wasn't demanding. Her voice had been soft, almost apologetic when she asked, "May I play for food?" Her eyes, though, clear, unflinching, steady, betrayed no shame, just hunger and something deeper, a quiet kind of courage. The man's laughter was sharp. "Food," he gestured grandly, beckoning to the diners scattered across the lounge. "She thinks this is a soup kitchen. Next she'll be telling us she's Mozart in rags." Nervous chuckles rippled among the guests, some trying to hide their unease behind wine glasses. A few pulled out their phones, fingers already swiping to record. The girl didn't move. She folded her hands in front of her, standing small but unbroken. Her stomach ached, but her dignity was intact. The piano gleamed behind the velvet rope, a symbol of everything she'd been denied. Opportunity, recognition, a chance. The man leaned closer, lowering his voice so it dripped with venom but still loud enough for all to hear. "People like, you don't touch instruments like that. It's not for beggars, it's for artists." That stung, not because of the insult, but because he assumed she didn't belong to the world of music. He assumed wrong. Whispers grew around the lounge. Did she really ask to play? Look at her clothes. What could she know about a piano? This is embarrassing. One woman raised her phone higher, ready to capture the spectacle, confident it would end in humiliation. The girl's lips curved into the faintest smile. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She just stood, still and calm, as if waiting for something inevitable. The man, enjoying the audience he'd gathered, gave a mock bow. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's entertainment. Hunger-dressed. In rags!" Laughter scattered again, some uneasy, some cruel. But somewhere in the crowd, a quiet diner leaned forward, sensing what others missed, that her silence wasn't weakness. It was patience. They thought it was harmless mockery, but within moments their laughter would turn into stunned silence. She hadn't been born into privilege, not even close. Her earliest memories weren't of polished floors or bright chandeliers, but of a cramped apartment where the fridge sometimes hummed while empty and where her mother stretched every dollar as if it were elastic. Her mother, a woman of quiet strength, worked long hours at diners and laundromats just to keep the lights on. But no matter how exhausted she came home, she always made time to hum lullabies. And those melodies, simple and soft, planted something. In her daughter's heart, a seed of music. When her mother passed away far too soon, the girl's world shattered. She was left with little more than the memory of that humming voice and a few battered sheets of piano music tucked into an old backpack. From then on, she drifted between shelters, borrowed couches, and streets that were never forgiving. But even in the darkest nights, when hunger gnawed and loneliness weighed heavy, she found her escape in music. She practiced on whatever keys she could find. Old keyboards at churches with missing notes, music rooms at schools, where she'd sneak, in after hours just to let her fingers dance for a few stolen minutes. When there were no instruments at all, she tapped her fingers against tabletops, park benches, or even her own thighs, drilling scales and arpeggios in silence. She had no audience, no teacher, no safety net, only raw determination and a belief. That music would one day be her way out. Her grandmother, the last anchor in her fragile world, offered wisdom that carried her further than food ever could. Dignity doesn't shout. It waits, and then it roars. Those words stayed with her, shaping how she endured each humiliation, each cruel glance, each locked door. She refused to beg for pity. She refused to bow to despair. Her dream of becoming a concert pianist, to one day play on stages she had only seen in magazines, became her fuel. She carried her sheet music everywhere, folded and worn, like scripture. Even when her stomach ached, even when the winter winds cut her thin jacket, she never let go of those pages. They weren't just notes on paper. They were proof that she belonged to something bigger than the circumstances pressing her down. And yet, the world rarely saw her that way. People didn't look at her and see resilience or brilliance. They saw her frayed clothes, her tired eyes, the way she asked for food instead of ordering it. To them, she was just another homeless girl, someone to avoid, dismiss, or ridicule. That's what made the arrogance of men like the one in the lounge so dangerous. The antagonist came from a world opposite hers, polished, gilded, dripping with wealth and entitlement. To him, worth was measured by appearances, by tailored suits, by diamond cufflinks, by the price of the champagne in his hand. He thrived on control, on belittling those who didn't have the armor of money or pedigree. In his eyes, mocking her wasn't cruelty, it was entertainment, and yet in her silence he saw only weakness. What he didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that her silence wasn't empty. It was filled with every hour she had spent practicing on broken keyboards, every night she had traced melodies on park benches, every whispered mantra from her grandmother that had carried her this far. She wasn't just standing in front of that piano, hungry and dismissed. She was carrying symphonies inside her. The narrator's words closed like a door about to open. What they didn't know was that behind her, silence lived symphonies. The laughter in the lounge spread like ripples across a glass of spilled champagne. It wasn't laughter born of joy, but of cruelty. Sharp, shallow, and nervous. The wealthy man in the tailored suit, the one who had first sneered at her, basked in it as if it were his private orchestra. He gestured dramatically toward the grand piano, polished to a shine under golden lights. "Can you imagine?" he said, voice booming. "This little beggar thinks she can just sit down at our piano. What's next? Maybe she'll ask to headline Carnegie Hall." A burst of laughter followed, though not everyone joined in. Some chuckled too quickly, covering discomfort with noise. Others shifted in their seats, unsure whether to be entertained or uneasy. Phones remained raised, lenses aimed at the girl who had asked for nothing more than a chance to play in exchange for food. She stood still, hands clasped, her eyes steady. Her clothes were worn, her shoes frayed, but her composure never wavered. "Please," she said softly, "just one song. I don't need money, only something to eat." The man tilted his head, smirking. "Food for noise? You think this is a street corner? This is a hotel lounge. People like you don't touch instruments like this." He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a cruel whisper but loud enough for the crowd to catch. "You're dirty. Do you know how much that piano costs? More than you'll see in a lifetime." A few diners laughed, the kind of uneasy laughter that grows out of obligation rather than amusement. Others looked down at their plates, uncomfortable, stirring their drinks without sipping. Yet a handful of guests, those watching more closely, noticed the girl's silence wasn't born of shame. It was something steadier. The man pressed on, drunk on his own performance. "Why don't you play with the trash cans outside? That's about your level, isn't it?" The girl raised her chin, her voice calm. "I only ask for one chance." "Just one," he snorted. "A chance? A chance to humiliate yourself? Look at you. Do you even wash those hands? What makes you think you deserve to touch those keys?" Gasps echoed softly around the room, but no one interrupted him. He thrived on their silence, mistaking it for consent. Still, the girl didn't move, didn't bow her head. She repeated, her tone the same as before, quiet but unyielding. Just one song. The tension in the room thickened. Some diners leaned toward each other, whispering. "She's too calm," one murmured. "She knows something." Another frowned, setting down his fork. "It's not right, the way he's talking to her." But others remained caught in the spectacle, chuckling, recording, waiting for the punchline they believed was coming. The antagonist saw his audience wavering, so he raised the stakes. "Fine," he said mockingly. "Let's have a show. But first," he stepped closer to the girl, circling her like a predator. "Tell us, little beggar, what makes you think you can sit where real artists sit? Do you even know what music is?" The girl's expression didn't change. Her silence pressed against his words like a wall. "Oh, I see," he sneered. "She's mute now. Maybe she only knows how to bang. On pots and pans." Some laughter rang out again, thin and brittle. A woman in pearls shook her head, whispering to her date, "She shouldn't be here. It's embarrassing." But her date frowned. "No," he said quietly. "I think it's something else." She hasn't flinched once. The girl took a small step toward the piano, her voice low but steady. "Please, let me play." The man barked a laugh, raising his hands as though announcing to a stage. "You see, she won't give up. Persistent little beggar. Tell me, what will you play? Chopsticks, or perhaps a nursery rhyme?" He mimicked hammering at imaginary keys, drawing a few more nervous chuckles from the room. Still, she didn't answer his taunts. Her eyes stayed locked on the piano, not on him. Her hunger was real, but her dignity was deeper. By now, the crowd had split. On one side, laughter and smirks continued, people leaning back in their seats as though settling in for a comedy. On the other, quiet tension grew, furrowed brows, whispered debates, sideways glances. "She's too calm," one diner whispered. "It feels like she's waiting." Near the back of the lounge, a man who had been silent until now leaned over to his companion and muttered, almost under his breath, "Careful. Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you." The words hung in the air, unnoticed by most, but prophetic all the same. The antagonist grinned, mistaking the girl's poise for weakness, and prepared to deliver one last cruel blow, not realizing the silence he mocked was the prelude to his own undoing. The antagonist smirked, his voice ringing across the lounge. Like a challenge. "All right, beggar girl," he sneered, spreading his arms as though presenting a circus act. "You want to prove yourself so badly? Fine. One song, one chance. Let's see you humiliate yourself in front of everyone." The audience stirred. Phones lifted higher, glasses clinked down onto tables as diners leaned forward. The girl nodded once, calm, unflinching, as if she had been waiting her entire life for this permission disguised as mockery. She walked to the velvet rope that guarded the grand piano, her steps quiet but certain. For a moment, even the air seemed to hold its breath. The antagonist laughed, a sharp sound that echoed through the room. "Careful, sweetheart. Don't scratch it with those rags you call clothes." More chuckles rippled, but softer now, threaded with unease. The girl didn't look at him. She looked only at the piano. She slipped onto the bench, her back straight, her hands hovering above the keys. For an instant, her eyes closed. She remembered nights in shelters tapping melodies onto her knees, afternoons in empty churches where she chased echoes across broken keyboards, the mantra her grandmother had given her. Dignity doesn't shout. It waits. And then it roars. And then she began. The first notes poured out like water breaking through stone, clear and powerful. Chopin's nocturne flowed under her fingers with aching beauty, each keystroke precise yet full of emotion. The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses lowered slowly to tables. Within seconds, the laughter vanished, replaced by stunned silence. Every ear locked onto her, every eye glued to her small, worn figure commanding the piano. The antagonist's smirk faltered. He shifted in his seat, trying to reclaim his bravado. "It's just one song," he muttered, but the mutter betrayed his unease. Without pause, the girl shifted into Mozart, the light, playful runs cascading like silver bells. Her hands moved so quickly they blurred, yet not a single note wavered. Diners gasped. A woman near the bar pressed her hand to her mouth, tears welling. The French family who had been whispering earlier began to record intently, their camera shaking in awe. Still, she wasn't finished. She slid seamlessly into Gershwin, jazz riffs tumbling from her hands with improvisational brilliance. The lounge itself seemed transformed. The chandeliers swayed as though dancing to her rhythm, the polished walls vibrating with newfound life. Guests who moments ago had mocked her now leaned forward, transfixed. One man whispered hoarsely, She's extraordinary." Requests began to fly from the tables, timid at first, then bolder. "Beethoven," someone shouted. Without hesitation, the opening of Fur Elise rang out, delicate yet commanding. "Rachmaninoff," cried another, and her hands thundered across the keys with the weight of a full orchestra. "Play something modern," a younger diner yelled, and she spun melodies from a pop song into a classical fugue so breathtaking that even teenagers in the back put their phones down in disbelief. The shockwave rolled through the crowd. Mouths hung open, eyes glistened, hearts raced. It wasn't just her technical mastery. It was the soul pouring out of every note, the years of hunger and resilience transmuted into sound. She played as if the piano itself had been waiting for her all along. By now, waitstaff peered out from the kitchen, wiping their hands on aprons just to get a glimpse. The bartender leaned against the counter, shaking his head slowly as if unable to believe what he was hearing. Even the security guard at the door, who had been trained to remain expressionless, stood straighter, eyes wide. The antagonist tried to laugh, but the sound caught in his throat. He shifted again, tugging at his collar, cheeks burning. It's a trick," he stammered. "She's practiced this routine." But no one listened. They were too busy clapping, cheering, crying. The spotlight no longer belonged to him. It belonged entirely to her. She finished a piece with a flourish, her chest rising and falling, and the room erupted into thunderous applause. Diners rose to their feet, some whistling, others pounding. The tables in approval. Phones recorded from every angle, the light of dozens of screens capturing her transformation from mocked beggar to undeniable prodigy. She rose slowly from the bench, bowing her head in gratitude. Then, in a voice as quiet and steady as her presence had always been, she said, "Music belongs to everyone. Respect is the only ticket you need." The symbolic line cut through the air sharper than any insult could. Applause roared louder, echoing against the walls. People shouted in agreement. "Bravo!" "Yes, that's right." The antagonist slumped in his chair, red-faced, eyes darting desperately for support that no longer existed. Guests who had once laughed at his jokes turned their backs. Even the waitstaff, who had been afraid to intervene before, smiled openly. At the girl, some clapping along with the crowd. And then, the final blow came. From the center of the audience, a tall, silver-haired man rose to his feet. His applause was louder, stronger, steadier than all the rest. He stepped forward, his presence commanding, his expression warm. Those who recognized him whispered urgently. He was a renowned philanthropist, a patron of the arts, someone whose opinion could change lives with a single nod. He walked to the edge of the piano, waiting for the applause to die down. "Young lady," he said, his voice carrying, "the world does not yet know your name, but after tonight, it will." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, extending it with reverence. "I would be honored if you would audition for my foundation. We sponsor artists with extraordinary talent, and you, my dear, are extraordinary." The girl's hands trembled as she accepted the card. She bowed her head, whispering, "Thank you." The room erupted again, cheers filling every corner, echoing like thunder rolling through mountains. The antagonist buried his face in his hands, defeated, his arrogance exposed for the shallow cruelty it was. The girl, once dismissed as trash, now stood taller than anyone in the room, not because of wealth or status, but because her music had silenced mockery and awakened awe. In that moment, the balance shifted forever. The girl was no longer invisible. She was unforgettable. The applause still echoed when the antagonist attempted to stand, desperate to reclaim control. He opened his mouth as if to make another joke, but no one cared to listen. The diners, who had once laughed at his cruelty now, turned their backs, whispering about the arrogance they had indulged. Some shook their heads in disgust, others openly mocked him now, imitating his earlier sneer with biting accuracy. His empire of condescension had collapsed in a single night. "Can you believe he called her trash?" someone muttered. "He's the only embarrassment here," another replied. The weight of the room shifted. The power he had wielded so casually was gone, stripped away by the brilliance of a girl he'd tried to humiliate. His name, once spoken with deference, was now whispered with contempt. Meanwhile, all eyes turned toward her. The philanthropist remained by her side, his hand lightly resting on her shoulder. "Young lady," he said, voice steady and clear. "Your music is a gift, and gifts like this must not be wasted. My foundation will sponsor you. You will have lessons, a place to live, and a chance to audition for the academy. The world deserves to hear you." The room erupted in applause once more. Not polite clapping, but the raw thunder of people realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary. The waitress staff cheered, some with tears in their eyes. A group of teenagers who had come expecting. Only dinner clapped until their palms stung, shouting, "You're amazing." The French family stood, bowing their heads in respect. The girl, overwhelmed, held the card tight in her hand. Her chest rose and fell as if she couldn't breathe. She nodded, whispered, "Thank you," but her voice broke. The word swallowed by emotion. Hours later, when the crowd had dispersed and the piano keys had fallen silent, she sat in the corner of the lounge with a borrowed phone in her hand. She dialed the only number she still knew by heart. Her grandmother answered, her voice frail but warm. "Hello, Grandma." The girl's voice trembled, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. "They laughed at me. They mocked me. But then I played. I played, and everything changed. They offered me a chance. Lessons, an academy, a future." Her words spilled like a river breaking free of its dam. I think this is it." There was silence on the line, and then her grandmother's voice, soft but proud, came through. "You didn't just play, baby. You made them listen." The girl pressed the phone to her chest, sobbing quietly. For all the applause, for all the offers, nothing meant more than those words. But outside the warm glow of that conversation, the antagonist's humiliation spread like wildfire. Diners had uploaded the videos within minutes of the performance, captions blazing across social media. She asked to play for food, they mocked her, and then she gave the performance of a lifetime. Respect is the only ticket you need. Clips looped endlessly, the antagonist sneering, calling her dirty, forbidding her from touching the piano, followed by her playing, her brilliance undeniable. The internet didn't hold back. Comments flooded in. This man thought he was powerful, but she destroyed him with grace. Never underestimate the quiet ones. That girl is going places. The antagonist, once confident in his untouchable status, now found himself trending for all the wrong reasons. His face, red with humiliation, was plastered on memes. When you pick the wrong person to mock, his reputation crumbled in real time, a public downfall captured in high definition from dozens of angles. Meanwhile, admiration for the girl grew just as fast. News outlets picked up the story, calling her the homeless prodigy, and the girl who silenced arrogance with music. Offers began pouring in. Scholarships from music schools, invitations to perform, interviews with journalists eager to tell her story. That night had begun with her asking only for food. It ended with her holding not just a meal ticket, but the keys to a future she had almost given up on. And in the quiet after the storm, she sat with her grandmother's words, echoing in her heart, "You didn't just play, you made them listen." Because that was the truth. She hadn't won by shouting back, by meeting cruelty with cruelty. She had won by letting her music speak louder than arrogance ever could. And the world, once blind to her brilliance, would never forget her again. The days that followed unfolded like a dream she had once thought impossible. The philanthropist's promise was not empty. Within a week, she had been enrolled in a prestigious conservatory, her tuition and living expenses fully covered. For the first time in years, she slept in a bed she could call her own. She woke each morning to practice on pianos that gleamed under studio lights, surrounded by teachers who recognized her as more than a charity case. They saw her as a phenomenon. She threw herself into training, every hour at the keys a declaration of gratitude and determination. Her past had been marked by hunger and struggle, but her future became a symphony of opportunity. Auditions led to recitals. Recitals led to invitations. Within a few short years, her name appeared on concert posters, her performances filling halls with audiences who rose to their feet in thunderous ovations. The girl who once asked to play for food was now celebrated as one of the most promising pianists of her generation, but she never forgot where she came from. With her growing fame, she established a foundation dedicated to providing instruments and lessons to underprivileged youth. She donated keyboards to shelters, funded music programs in schools that had long since cut their arts budgets, and personally mentored children who, like her, carried brilliance inside but lacked the means to show it. She called the initiative Keys to Dignity, and its mission was simple. No child should be denied a chance to discover music because of poverty. As her star rose, the antagonists plummeted. The videos of that night spread faster than wildfire. He became infamous not for his wealth or influence, but for his cruelty. Everywhere he went, whispers followed. Business partners quietly distanced themselves. Social circles turned cold. His face appeared in memes, his sneer captioned with lines, like When Arrogance Meets Talent and The Man Who Lost to a Waitress of Music. What had once been his pride, his reputation, was now rubble. Shunned from the spaces where he once held sway, he faded into irrelevance, remembered only as the villain of a viral tale. For the world, his name became synonymous with arrogance. Unmasked, his downfall a cautionary tale of what happens when cruelty collides with hidden greatness. Even the restaurant itself changed. Management realized they could not erase what had happened, but they could transform it into something better. They launched a program to celebrate hidden talents among staff and to support struggling musicians. Local performers were invited to play regularly. A portion of profits went toward providing meals for homeless youth. A plaque was installed near the piano, engraved with the words she had spoken that night. Music belongs to everyone. Respect is the only ticket you need. Meanwhile, the internet made sure her story was never forgotten. The video of her performance racked up millions of views within days. Hashtags trended across platforms. Respect is the ticket. Dignity wins. Play for food. Reaction videos poured in. Musicians tearing up at her playing. Teachers showing her clip to classrooms. Activists pointing to her story as proof of resilience. News outlets ran features. From homelessness to concert halls, the girl who played for food. Her interviews were watched worldwide, her words replayed in countless languages. She spoke not of revenge, but of hope, urging others never to underestimate the quiet or dismiss the unseen. Millions were inspired. Children picked up instruments for the first time. Strangers donated to music programs. Messages flooded her inbox from people who had once been overlooked, each thanking her for reminding them that dignity and brilliance could never truly be silenced. Her rise was not just personal. It was a movement, a ripple that became a wave, spreading across the world with the reminder that talent does not wear a uniform, brilliance does not live only in gilded halls, and respect is the only ticket anyone truly needs. The girl who once stood hungry at a velvet rope now stood on global stages. Her name celebrated, her music adored, her legacy already written. And though audiences clapped for her performances, she knew the real symphony was bigger than herself. It was the sound of millions listening, at last, to those the world too often tries to silence. They mocked her hunger, forgetting brilliance isn't dimmed by struggle. They looked at her worn clothes and empty hands and assumed she carried nothing worth hearing. Yet in one night, their arrogance collapsed, and her music rose higher than any chandelier in that gilded room. What they dismissed as weakness revealed itself as strength, and what they tried to silence became the song that silenced them instead. Her story is more than a performance. It is a reminder etched in every note she played. True power does not come from titles, money, or privilege. True power is knowledge, sharpened in the dark and revealed in the light. True wealth is not the glitter of status symbols, but humility, the ability to honor others no matter where they stand. And true downfall, it is arrogance, unmasked for the frailty it always was. This was never just about a piano. It was about respect, the only ticket that truly matters. If you believe hidden genius deserves a stage, No matter where it's found, share this story. Let the world hear it again and again. Dignity and brilliance always rise.